We will be learning how to cut and sew a Caribbean scuba dress just like you are seeing on your screen for a baby girl in this video. My name is Oluwatosin. In case you are new here, and you're welcome to all my returning subscribers, you're also welcome. If you are new here, please consider subscribing and don't just subscribe, turn on the notification bell so that you'll be notified when next I upload a new video on this channel. I made this scuba dress for a baby girl and her mom. I already uploaded a cutting and sewing tutorial, like a detailed tutorial. In fact, two detailed tutorials on how I was able to cut and sew for the mom. If you've not seen that video, you should check it out. The link is currently showing up and it will also be down in the description box. But in this video, we'll be talking about how I was able to cut and sew for the baby girl. That is what this video is all about. Now this video will be in two parts. In this first part that you're currently watching, I'm talking about how I cut the whole of this dress and now I was able to sew up to the half cut level. So this video is about how I was able to cut this Caribbean scuba dress and how I was able to sew from the beginning till the half cut level. And in my subsequent video, like in my next tutorial, I'll be uploading a detailed video on the sewing of the rest of the dress. Now, firstly, I need you to know that to be able to successfully cut and sew this dress, you need a lot of fabric, regardless of the nature of fabric you are using. To be able to successfully cut and sew a Caribbean dress in the way that it will come out beautiful, you need to use a lot of fabric. So for this particular one, I used close to 4 yards, almost 3.5 yards of fabric, except you want your fabric, your pleat, like the Caribbean part, to have joining. And in the case of this scuba, if it's to have joining like that, it will be showing, and the joining, it will not look nice on it. Hope what I'm trying to say is clear. That being said, the basic measurements you need to measure on any child to be able to successfully cut and sew a Caribbean dress like this are the full length, the half length, the bust, the waist, the shoulder, and then the armhole. The first thing we'll do is to cut out the half cut, the half length. So for the half cut, I considered our bust, like the highest measurement between our bust and our waist. You can see a child that is our waist because sometimes children used to have bigger belly than the chest, than bust. But in our case, is our bust. So I measured our bust and I added 10 inches allowance. This 10 inches includes allowance for zip, allowance for stitching. All the allowance you need is included in this 10 inch. So you're going to fold that into four, leaving zipper allowance of 1.5 inch at the back. Which Now you will start measuring from the 1.5 inch. You skip that 1.5 inch, and then you start from where I'm starting from now. Divide our shoulder by two. Mark that. We'll not be adding any allowance to the shoulder because this dress does not have a sleeve. Then our armhole divided by two. I marked that. Then our bust divided by four. I marked that. I added 1.5 inch sewing allowance. I didn't mark the waist because the bust and waist is just 1 inch. The difference between the bust and waist is just 1 inch. So I didn't measure, rather I just marked it. Then for the neckline, I used neck width of 5. On fold of 2, I marked 2.5. And for the neck depth, for the front neckline, I used 4 in total. 2 for the round part, and then it's kind of a sweetheart neck at the front. So two for the round part and two for the sweetheart part. Then I cut it out. For the back neckline, I used two, and the back neckline is a round neck. When I was done cutting out, I proceeded to slanting my shoulder. I did not mark it. You can mark before slanting, but I just proceeded to slanting and cutting it out. Now, I was supposed to use marker to do this calculation, to write it down, but I used biro and it's not clear. I'm just going to explain what I was doing. To cut the Caribbean part, I mean the pleating part. Firstly, this Caribbean can be 2 layers, it can be 3 layers, it can be 4 layers, depends on your preference. In my case, I used 3 layers. You can tell from the video that I played at the beginning of this tutorial. And the 3 layers, they are not the same length. The layer 1 and 2 from up, layer 1 and 2 from the waistline is the same length, but the third one is not the same length as layer 1 and 2. So what I calculated was the waistline multiplied by 3 for the first layer starting from up, the waistline multiplied by 3, and for the length, for the whole length of the dress, for our full length, I deducted the half length. So our full length is 32, our half length is 9. You know what I have left suppose is 23. But that 23, I didn't divide it by 3 because the layers are not equal in length. So 23 divided by 3 is supposed to give me 7 point something, approximately 8. So instead of cutting 8 inches, I cut 9 inches for the first layer, 9 inches for the second layer, and now the third layer is 5 inches. I'm talking about length. But if you check very well, these layers, they are really lapping on each other. So each one is lapping with 1.5 inch on the next one, and I still need allowance to attach the next one to it below. So I added 2.5 inches allowance to the length of each layer. That is for the length. Now, for how long we will cut. For the first layer, like I said earlier, I cut times 3 of the waistline. For the second layer, I cut times 5 of the waistline. And then for the last layer, I cut times 7 of the waistline. For the first layer, times 3 of the waistline. So let's say our waistline is not imagination. Our waistline is 25. For the first layer, I cut 25 times 3, which is 75 inches long, and then the length, like 75 inches in length, and the breadth, which is supposed to be 9 inches, I added 2.5 inches to make it 11.5. I hope my explanation is clear. Now, for the second one, that's 75 inches. I still added times 2 of the waistline, which is 50, and then the length is the same with the first one. For the third one, I cut times 7 of the waistline, and the length is 5 inches plus 2.5 inches that I added, the allowance. That makes it 7.5 inch. I hope my explanation is clear. So, regardless of the measurement or whoever you are cutting for, just know that the first layer should be at least times 3 of the waistline so that you have enough pleats. And then the second layer should be more like at least times 1.5 of what you've cut for the first one, and the third one should be at least times 1.5 of what you have cut for the second layer. What I'm trying to say is, in my case now, my second layer, for the first layer I cut 75. My second layer has to be at least times 1.5 of 75, like 75 times 1.5. Whatever you have cut for layer 1, layer 2 has to be at least times 1.5 of it. Whatever you have cut for layer 2, layer 3 has to be at least times 1.5 of it. This is at least, though. You can make it more than that. In fact, I would advise you make it more than that. But in a situation where you are trying to manage your fabric, like you have limited fabric, it should be at least, so that your pleats will come out well. Here are the 3 layers of mine when I was done cutting it. Then the next I did was to cut facing for the half cut. I cut facing for front and then facing for back. Considering that this dress does not have a your facing has to be big enough to cover the armhole. So you are not cutting the regular short facing. You are cutting a facing that is big enough to cover the neckline and the armhole. Now it's time to start sewing. To start sewing, the first I did was to sew the half cut. So I'll be joining front and back separately for the main fabric, and then I'll be joining front and back separately for the lining. Lining in this case, you can see that I'm using Scuba as the lining as well, because when you are to line a Scuba like this, it's advisable you use Scuba or Lycra, something very stretchy as much as the Scuba. Now I joined the front to the back, right side facing right side for the main fabric. Then I did the same to the lining. After doing this, the next is to turn the neckline. So this is the facing now. I'll be facing the main fabric on it. I'll make sure that the two shoulder lines are directly facing each other. You can even go ahead to pin it down just like I did so that it will not shift. Pin the two shoulder line, the shoulder line for the actual fabric and the shoulder line for the lining, face right side to right side, and then you pin them together. Then I will start turning. To turn, because I'll be turning the zip later, I'll skip like 1 inch before I start turning, and I'll be turning with hemming gum. So I skipped 1 inch on this zip allowance side before I started turning, and on the other side as well, I will stop 1 inch to the zip allowance. Then for the neckline, when I was cutting the neckline, I cut out the neckline on the main fabric, but for the lining, I did not cut that sweetheart part of the neckline. If you noticed, is at this point when I'm done turning that I will trim it out. It's just the way I want it. If you don't want it like this, you can cut the two necklines while you were cutting, and then you will notch that part so that the V parts can come out very, very well. So I flipped this to the right side, and then I gave it a very good press, and the front and back neckline, they've gone together now, except that 1 inch that I said I left on the zip allowance to both sides. The next is to turn the armhole, so I'll flip right side to right side for the main fabric and the lining. When I say lining, please, you should know that I'm referring to still the scuba, because I'm using scuba as the lining. So turn right side to right side just like I did. Then you will stitch from one side to the shoulder line. Like you will stitch from one side of the armhole to the shoulder line. You will stop and bring it out. Then you go to the other side, face right side to right side just like I'm doing, and then you stitch from the armhole to the shoulder line. Then I turned my armhole with hemming gum just like I did to the neckline. So I did this to one armhole, and then I repeated the same thing to the other armhole, and that is it for the turning of the armhole. If you turn your armhole with hemming gum and you press it, you will see that it will stick down, like it will gum down very well to the lining, and it will be so neat. Now the next is to shape. To shape, I'm going to flip the facing up, and then I will start shaping from the facing down to the armhole, and then to the bust, then to the waistline. I'm doing this so that the joining for the shaping will be concealed. It will not just be showing, like when you flip this dress to the wrong side, the joining will be concealed up to where the facing stops. It's from where the facing stops that you start seeing the joining that you have used to shape it. You can see that the joining now is not showing. It started showing from where the facing stops. Now the next is to do the same thing to the other side, like shape the other side of your half cut. And after shaping both sides of the armhole, I gave it a very good press, and here we are at this point. For now, this is where I'll be stopping this particular video. Like I said at the initial stage of this video, I'm doing it this way because I don't want to skip any parts that I'm not supposed to skip. I want this tutorial to be as comprehensive and as beginners friendly as possible. This is the outcome of this dress. You should watch out for the sewing tutorial, which I'll be uploading after this one. Once I've uploaded it, I'll put the link down in the description box. If you've not subscribed, kindly do. In case you have any questions, the comment section is always open to your questions, and give this video a thumbs up if it has been helpful to you. And don't forget that the link to the cutting and sewing tutorial of the one I made for the mom is down in the description box. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.